Greetings, everyone. With a good understanding of correlation, we are ready to talk about regression. The simplest form of regression is simple linear regression, in which there's one dependent variable, y, and one independent variable, x. Both variables are on either ratio or interval scales, and they share a linear relationship. Sounds familiar? It's the same requirements for doing Pearson's R. Simple regression is an extension of correlation, but regression is asymmetrical. You need to base your predictions for y on the information from x. Here, y is the dependent variable and x is the independent variable. Simple regression is expressed as a mathematical linear equation in the format where the predicted y value equals a plus b times x. Here, x is the independent variable and b is the regression coefficient. You may know it as the slope. The name of a on its birth certificate is regression constant, but you may know it by its nickname, the y-intercept. Remember, when you write the equation, you need to either put a hat over y to indicate it's the predicted values, or to add an e at the end of the equation to show that there are prediction errors. In order to write a regression equation, you need to estimate the values of a and b. If you remember from EDPR 8541, the method to estimate the value of these two parameters is called ordinary least square. The rationale is that given a scatter plot that shows the linear relationship between the dependent and the independent variables, there could be many different straight lines going through the data points. The regression line described by the regression equation is called the line of best fit. The line of best fit is chosen among all possible candidates because it minimizes the differences between the observed and the predicted y values. Based on the ordinary least square method, here are the formulas for you to calculate the values of a and b using the raw data. I have an example to demonstrate this process. In this data set, there are scores from test 1 and test 2 for 8 students. If we would like to run a regression to predict their scores on test 2 based on their test 1 scores, the equation would be the predicted test 2 scores equals a plus b times test 1 scores. After going through the calculation, you can see that the value of b, the regression coefficient, is 0.862, and the value of a, the intercept, is 11.17. Therefore, the regression equation is the predicted y value equals 11.17 plus 0.862 times x. One thing to keep in mind is that the regression line is a collection of all predicted y values. If you need to draw a regression line given the regression equation, it's pretty straightforward. You need 2 points to draw a straight line. If there is no additional information, all you need to do is to randomly pick two x values, plug each of them into the regression equation, and get the corresponding predicted y values. Now use the first x value and its predicted y value to plot the first point on the ordinate. Then repeat the same process with the second x value and its predicted y value. Once you have the 2 points, draw a straight line to connect them. This line is your regression line. It helps to know that the regression line always passes through 2 special points. The first one is when x equals 0, y is the regression constant. The second special point is the mean of x and the mean of y. Knowing these 2 special points can save you some calculations when drawing a regression line. I have a separate video tutorial to show how to run simple linear regression in SPSS. Here, I would like to discuss the underlying assumptions of linear regression. On this slide, I listed 4 underlying assumptions. Number 1, independence. It means that all subjects in the regression study must be selected independently of each other. This is not something we can control statistically. Researchers must ensure independence during sample selection. Number 2, linearity. It's the requirement that there is a linear relationship between the independent and dependent variables. Number 3, normality. The interpretation of normality varies depending on the textbook. In most introductory statistics courses, normality refers to the normal distribution of the dependent and independent variables. However, it's actually about the normality of the conditional distributions. What is conditional distribution? Be clear that for every given x value, there may be many different observed y values. Imagine that in a large sample, there are 30 students who scored 70 on test 1, but their scores vary on test 2. The distribution of their test 2 scores is called the conditional distribution of y given x equals 70. Similarly, if another 35 students scored 71 on test 1, their scores on test 2 form the conditional distribution of y given x equals 71. Simply put, for each x value, there is a conditional distribution of y. Normality means that all conditional distributions are normal distributions. Recall that every normal distribution has 2 parameters, the mean and the standard deviation. Now that we know all conditional distributions are normal, we must understand that the mean of a conditional distribution is the predicted y value. For example, for x equals 70 in our example, the predicted y value is 71.5. So we know that the conditional distribution of y has a mean of 71.5 at x equals 70. Assumption number 4 is homoscedasticity. This assumption states that all conditional distributions have the same standard deviation. This shared standard deviation is called the standard error of estimate. The value of the standard error of estimate is provided in the SPSS output. I included the formula for calculating the standard error of estimate on the slide to show that it is determined by the standard deviation of the dependent variable y along with the correlation between the independent and the dependent variables. A stronger correlation between x and y reduces the standard error of estimate. So does a smaller standard deviation of y. Whenever you encounter the term error in statistics, remember that it is something you want to minimize. Within the context of regression, a smaller standard error of estimate indicates more accurate prediction. It's important for you to get a good conceptual understanding of the underlying assumption this week. Next week, when we discuss multiple regression, I will show you how to verify whether the underlying assumptions are met in a regression analysis. Remember that regression is based on correlation. So the regression coefficient is related to the correlation between the dependent and independent variables. Mathematically, the regression coefficient equals the correlation times the ratio of the standard deviation of the dependent variable to the standard deviation of the independent variable. As a matter of fact, in simple regression, the squared value of the correlation is called the coefficient of determination. This value indicates how much of the variation in y can be explained by the variation in x. The last topic in this video is how to test the significance of the regression coefficient. The test information is provided in the SPSS output. Here, I use the same 5 steps to explain how to interpret the test values in the SPSS output. The test starts with the null hypothesis, which states that the regression coefficient is not significantly different from 0, meaning that the independent variable does not significantly contribute to predicting y. The alternative hypothesis states that the regression coefficient is significantly different from 0. So once you have your alpha value, you can find the observed t-value and its associated p-value in the SPSS output. The t-value is calculated as the estimated regression coefficient minus the hypothesized value and divide by its standard error. The hypothesized value is 0 by default. You do not need to do any hand calculations. Simply compare the p-value with your alpha value to decide whether to reject or fail to reject the null hypothesis. Remember that in the discussion of correlation, there is a test for Pearson R. The test for the regression coefficient in simple regression is just another version of that correlation test. The two tests yield identical outcomes. I hope this video helps your understanding of simple regression. Thank you for watching.